Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my late E3 coverage, and today we're doing the Square Enix press conference. So this press conference was scheduled for just over an hour, right? And I think it ran for about 30 minutes. This was a really strange one. It had some cool looking stuff. It had some stuff we already knew about. They announced new games, which I'll give them mad props for. But it was really short and sweet and kind of like, oh wow, it's over. So it kind of was underwhelming because it built steam up and it splashed it in your face and it didn't even pass you a tissue. And it was strange. But I can't call it the worst or even indeed bad, even though I know I watched Darkside Phil react to it and I don't think he liked it very much. But, you know, you can't really judge taste coming from a man like that. But the first thing that they showed was Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And I'm a little bit indifferent with this, and I'll tell you why. Tomb Raider to me is one of those series that is good, and that a lot of people play, but it kind of gets ahead of itself. So the remake, or the reboot, or whatever you want to call it, of Tomb Raider, where it was torture porn, Lara edition, see how many ways we can infer rape and damage to this Puritan, nubile young woman. And I liked it, because I'm a sick man who likes those things. No, I liked the game. It had fun gameplay, it looked beautiful, it had a really nice cinematic angle to it, it had good design, it was cohesive. It did kind of all the things it needed to do. It definitely reeked of a woman Uncharted. It was kind of, you know, like Fem-charted. And there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're going to copy something like Uncharted, it's always going to draw those influences, which is wonderfully ironic, considering that if it wasn't for Tomb Raider, Uncharted would not exist. So it's this kind of strange collocation between these two things. And it's cool, but it's one of those things where the second game came out quite quickly after the first game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and it went snowy and focused on like that thing that it did. It went a little bit more on the open worldy nature of it, the kind of each hub zone and the questing and the hunting and a few other things. And the game was beautiful, it worked well, it looked great, it had a lot going for it, it had some great technology. They are not bad games, but they're games that are so what they are. They epitomise themselves so much that it's almost impossible now to either get excited or surprised by them. And I said this to my friends when I saw the first initial impression of the Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It looks exactly like you would think it would look. And I know that sounds kind of silly, right? There's people going, well, isn't that the point? That's what a sequel is. But what I mean this negatively, because I'm watching a trailer of Lara like jumping into water with flame everywhere. She's running across these grand golden halls of these crazy structures of all kind of geometric design and with fantastical decorations and tableaus everywhere, and it's all, you know, cultural and Mayan and Aztec or whatever, and it all looks fantastic and over the top, and it's a montage of all those ridiculous moments that happen to Indiana Jones. But the problem is, the reason why those moments with Indiana are so good is because there's a slow bit in between them where we get to know him and we get to care about him. Lara has gone from a super vulnerable girl in a bad situation where she had to do everything she could to survive, and she came out of it a different person, but she lived. And now she's like she's a mass murderer. She's like a crazy evil person, and you watch these trailers of all this stuff, of all these paramilitary groups that she's wrecking and she's stabbing and she's cutting the throat. She's got this knife now. This knife is apparently the whole the rage. She's doing the Splinter Cell chaos theory, knifing everything after years of elbow clops. And you just sat there thinking, are we the fucking bad guy in this? I don't feel like we're the good guy in these games, and it gives you a disconnect, because in the first game you felt for her because she was in over her head and she was learning to be something. Now she's not that, and it just feels like she's going to these foreign places to be a dick to these other people all the time. And these games are so full of these expected scenarios that they're just one big giant set piece, and it's almost exhausting to watch them because it's all the same. It's self-sabotaging though, Because when everything is an explosion, explosions aren't cool anymore. And that's my problem with these games. Everything you step on breaks. Everything you go to explodes. You know, every vehicle fails and falls into a ravine and then, like, drops down a waterfall and lands on top of an aeroplane, and then the aeroplane crashes, and then you end up crashing into the one underground cavern of the one ancient city that millions of people have tried to find over thousands of centuries, and it turns out you found it in 30 seconds by falling through a waterfall onto a plane into a desert. And it's all so convenient and so ridiculous all the time. And admittedly, they do give you a bunch of side stuff that you can do to kind of intersperse it so it doesn't feel so all on the nose all the time. But I watched that trailer thinking, that game's going to be good, it's going to be technically sound, it's going to feel fine, but it's just the exact... It's the same of what we've already done. They're not taking it anywhere you don't think they would take it. It's such a sequel, it's harmful, and I'm hoping when I play it, because I'm going to play it, I do like these games, that I'm going to be completely wrong, and I'm just going to be like, I was silly to say those things I said on that E3 video, but I really feel like I'm not gonna, because when they're emphasizing that she can now hide in bushes, which she could already do, but now she can go up against mud walls, which is a bush that's on a wall, which you already did. Like, I don't know where the life in the... And like, the big things that they're promoting is that the AI talks to each other, which is silly, because judging by what you can do in this game, I saw her do a multiple enemy takedown, which just reeks of being too strong. So it asked the question, will it be balanced enough to make it challenging, because the last games weren't. The first game didn't even have a trophy for beating the hardest difficulty because it was so fucking easy. And then the second game, every enemy lined up for headshots, and then the poison arrows killed everything without ever having to aim. So it's just... It's the most beautiful, vapid experience ever, right? And I do worry for this game, because they're not bad games, and I don't want to sound like I'm selling you on these games being crappy, because they're not. But after all the Uncharted's that I've played, which are all fantastic, after all the Tomb Raiders I've played, which are equally fantastic, there comes a point where blowing everything up and sinking everything and toppling everything and free falling and hitting 7 trees and like getting trapped and your foot stuck and your arm stuck and your hair stuck, it's not enough. It's too much. We've done it too much. We need something else. And I don't know if they can deliver that. Which is like 5 minutes talking about Tomb Raider, so good for you, Square Enix. That's almost as long as your press conference. But then they showed a new IP, which I really, really liked immediately. This game had wonderful artwork, conceptual designs, and it had these inscriptions in each of these images that were shown quite quickly. And these inscriptions were giving you a visual history of centuries in this world, building this pantheon of what you're going to be experiencing when you play. And I thought it was superb. And at the end, it said it was being made by Platinum Games, which was just the icing on the cake, and of course the title is called Babylon's Fall. I'm going to be doing a focused video on this, because they showed no gameplay, but from what I got from it was so much more, because before I even knew what it was called or who was making it, I liked it. I liked the aesthetic, I liked the narrative, I liked the idea of what it was, and I'm going to talk more about that in its own video, because I'm going to have to stop each frame and slow them down so I can write down the inscription and I can read and give you the history of it, because it goes by way too quickly to catch it on your own, and it's very erased and effaced, so it's hard to read, but I'm going to hopefully do some patchwork and convey the full message. But the idea of it is you're kind of rebelling back against a goddess that's forsaken you, and you're playing as these particular types of creatures to do that. And the video showed a knight that was about to be killed by this huge thing, and its weird plume on its helmet was almost like ethereal and spectral and some kind of ghostly membrane, and it picked a sword up and it cut the thing. It cut the big monster before it could attack him. So it looks like Midna combat from Twilight Princess, but with big Souls-inspired, gothic-looking armor sets and shit. And it's Platinum Games, so it could be amazing or it could be near. But then after that they showed Octopath Traveler, which is another game that I think looks really, really cool. This is a Switch exclusive, so I'm almost never going to play this until 4 years later when they patch it to an actual console. But this is essentially the colour brown, the game. I've never seen such masterful uses of dogshit brown in my life. They've got every single possible variety and shade. It's like a countertop of ice cream with only the tone of feces, and you would think that with such a glowing appraisal that this game would look like shit. It doesn't. It looks amazing. It's just such a great aesthetic. It's going for the classic old school look of JRPGs back in the day, but it's pulling it off with almost like a coffee stained scroll motif. You know when you see old letters and they're stained and the paper's all worn down? It's kind of got this wonderfully, almost rustic look to it. But it's so detailed and so richly like illustrated. It's also baroque as well, so it's not bland and just different shades of terracotta garbage. It looks really nice. I'm also going to be doing a specialist video on this because other than the dumb name, I don't really know much about this game. I think you are 8 travellers who are going to be going on your own paths, and these paths will intertwine and so on and so forth. But it just kind of seems like generic JRPG that's not generic, hopefully. So I'm really excited to see what it is, even though I'm probably never going to play it. And then there was Just Cause 4. Lol. I don't care about Just Cause, and I never will. The next thing they announced is The Quiet Man. And this is another new IP, and I'm really, really stoked for this. I think that this was probably inspired in some ways by the John Wick movie with the deaf girl, because it seems like you're going to be playing as a deaf guy who looks kind of like that deaf girl. And the trailer was only a tidbit. It showed a little bit of gameplay, but it fused full motion video with high fidelity visuals, and it was a nice transition as well. But it was this deaf guy interrupting these gangbangers doing some kind of deal, and then he proceeded to beat them up with combat that looked like a fully fleshed out combat system. And they don't give you much to go on other than this idea of perhaps a seedy downtown kind of city environment where you're going to be some kind of revenge enforcer, and it's going to be combat driven and action driven and have really, you know, hand-to-hand combat, melee, impactful encounters, but it gave so little I can't really speak of it. Some of the animations looked a bit goofy as well, especially one of his arms. It's like his shoulder looked all weird. But it's a new game in a sea of sequels and remakes, so I'm all down for it. This is one of my favourite games of E3, even though I've seen absolutely nothing and it could be a giant pile of dog shit. But the fact it's new, and it had combat first over almost everything, could mean that it's a new action game coming out with deep and rewarding combat. So yeah, The Quiet Man. Really, really intrigued of the 40 seconds worth of whatever the hell it was. It could be nothing, it could be everything. I'm going to be watching it very closely. Please do not be like Extinction, Quiet Man. I want you to be good. And it's a cool name too. I like the name. But there you go, guys. Square Enix, if not for my little Tomb Raider tangent, this would have been about 4 minutes long because they didn't really show much. They did have 2 exclusives, or 2 new IPs, sorry, that I'm really, really interested in, being Babylon's Fall and Quiet Man, because there's so much potential there. We know nothing about them. They've got a hook that appeals just on a surface level. I really, really hope I don't hate what they turn into, because that would suck. Square Enix also shows Dragon Quest XI, and if you're a Dragon Quest guy, then you're going to be super stoked about that, because it's a very popular RPG series with the Akira Toriyama style, and they look amazing. But I've never been a Dragon Quest guy, so I didn't want to talk about it because there's just no real point. All I would have done is taken the piss, and there's no need. But yeah, short and sweet, Square. Going forward, they do have some promising titles coming, and it was actually one of the press conferences that had stuff that I got stoked for. So as much as it was short and it was kind of strange, I don't think it was the worst. I think it was pretty good for me, even though, like, the games that I'm most excited for are almost no entities, right? They're null entities because we know nothing about them. The Quiet Man could be a remake of Solitaire for desktops. We wouldn't even know. It just has a really fancy FMV cutscene to the intro of it. But I'm stoked. Babylon's Fall has me really interested. But what did you guys think? Thank you for watching. You take care now.